frame fell apart. And when it fell apart, there was a document that was behind this ugly photo that you see. And little did anybody know that what it was one of the first copies of the Declaration of Independence that was printed in Philadelphia in 1776 by John Dunlap. And as you can see, there were only 3 remaining in private hands at this time. The rest of the story, as Paul Harris would say, is in June 13th of 1991, this particular painting was sold for a $2.42 million. I hope this individual was a Rotarian and gave to the Rotary Foundation. So what I'd like to do tonight is sometimes we don't know what we don't know. I've been a Rotarian for 43 years and I thought I knew all about our Polio Plus program. In putting this presentation together, I found out that I really didn't know about what we really have accomplished. So what I'd like to start is when we first started polio. It was back in September 29th of 1979. It was done by a bunch of volunteers that were Rotarians in the Philippines. And it happened to be Rotary International Foundation's first 3H grant. But a lot of people don't really realize that we got into the polio business a lot earlier than that. Back in April of 1919, there was an individual named Edgar Allen of the Rotary Club at Erie, Ohio. And he formed it was a club project that he did, and it was called the Ohio Society for Crippled Children. Some of you are shaking your head. A lot of people don't realize that that became Easter seals. And what was interesting is that started off as a simple Rotary project. So let's look at what's going on in polio right now and what we've accomplished. If you look at it, again, back in 1985, we had over 350,000 cases a year. As of just 2 days ago, as of 2024, we only have 4 cases in the world. Is allowed over 20 million children are walking today because of our efforts in polio. Let's look at one of the other things of where these wild polio cases are. 2 of them are in Afghanistan and 2 are in Pakistan. And this is, like I said, as of April 17th of 2024. All of these cases are right in this particular border, in this particular town, that Roy, maybe you can pronounce it, but I can't.
Yeah, I got Pastuca.
You got it, that's it. Glad you're here, Roy. So one of the questions that I get asked all the time is polio can really happen anywhere. A lot of people don't really realize, but in June of 2020, there was a case of polio in the city of New York. How did that particular case start in New York? It was a young man who was unvaccinated, and he was infected by an individual that came over from Pakistan. So they say that polio is only a plane ride away. It's very, very true. In July of 2022, they found samples of polio in the water in London, England. Also in February of 2022, there were samples found in Jerusalem, Israel. Again, you need to realize that polio can go anywhere at any time to infect our kids. A lot of people really don't realize why Pakistan is one of the last particular countries that we're having to eliminate polio. Does anybody happen to know who this individual is? You do? Who is he?
He was a CIA agent who gave information to Osama.
That is exactly, well, partially right. This particular individual was an individual that actually was going into the compound of Osama bin Laden. He actually was told by, if you look it up in Google and everywhere else, that he was a polio vaccinator. He was not. He was an individual that was doing hepatitis studies, and he happened to be in that particular compound. What's interesting about this individual, he tried to flee right after our forces went into this compound. And I will tell you that I followed up with an individual that used to know him very well. He has not been seen since. So let's look at what it takes to really eliminate polio. And that is, we've got to have the support of the governments of the countries. One of the individuals who is truly my Rotary hero, and you'll never hear about this, is a trustee that I have the pleasure of serving with each and every time that I'm in Evanston. His name is Aziz Mimam, and he is the individual that is in the blue coat. What's so significant is that he is the individual that formed the group of Pakistan religious scholars. Why that's important? Because those are the individuals that have all the influence on the communities in Pakistan. I will also tell you that Aziz is a very, very special individual. And this next slide is going to be hard to show to you, but I saw Aziz about 2 weeks ago, and I verified it with this. We were having some really difficult times getting in to be able to immunize the children where the Taliban was. So Aziz did something that I cannot believe I'm going to tell you. He said that he wanted to meet with the leaders of the Taliban. He was put with a drape over his head, and he met with the Taliban chiefs and convinced them to suspend all of the killing of the people that they were doing to allow us to go into and immunize the children in one of the areas that we have a very difficult time. That, my friend, is a really true Rotarian. What is interesting is that vaccinating these children is very, very dangerous, as you can imagine. When we went in and did the raid on Obama's on Bin Laden's compound, one of the things that we did is we truly surprised the people in Pakistan. Specifically, the army was taken back without knowing that we were coming in. So if you think about it, they were pretty upset with the fact that we would do what we did. But I will tell you today that the Pakistan Army is now providing all of the security for all of the immunizers and vaccinators that we have in Pakistan now. So look at how things can change around. This is something that really surprised me, that we have over 350 frontline vaccinators. And these are mostly women that were paid a whopping $3.60 a day. Thanks to Rotary, that particular pay has now gone up to $6 a day. Can you imagine being on your feet 8 to 10 hours a day, putting your life in danger for vaccinating these children? I will tell you that some of these frontline vaccinators have been killed. And I will also tell you that there are families are visited by the national chair, and they are given a compensation by a particular committee that is funded by the CDC Foundation. One of the other fascinating things that is amazing to me is that each year we do 3 to 4 national immunization days in Pakistan, and over 45 million children are immunized in a 4-day period. How in the world do you ever be able to orchestrate something that is that significant as we have? This is exactly why we are at where we are in regard to polio. The other interesting thing that I would like to share with you is that we are immunizing over 800 million children a year at a cost of the vaccine of only a small, minor 15 cents per dose. The other thing that we need to realize is that our real legacy in polio may not be the elimination of polio. is the establishment of the 146 laboratories. I see some of you shaking your head. I don't mean to ruin your dinner tonight because it was a wonderful dinner, but they do 250 stool samples are tested each and every year. This is how we know whether there's polio in that particular area and whether it should be, whether the children should be treated once again with a vaccine. So what's really going to be interesting about this is that once polio is eliminated, and it will be, these labs will continue on. They'll be able to continue on to be able to help us monitor and be able to eliminate viruses that exist in the world today. Something that I think is very, very positive. The other thing that I would like to also go over is how significant the cost and the funding for polio is. This particular program costs $950 million a year. You can see that Rotary puts in $50 million, the Gates Foundation with a match puts in $100 million, governments put in $315 million, and UNICEF puts in $5 million. Those of you that can do quick math, you'll see that we're pretty short. Where does that other money come from? And this really surprised me when I found this out. It is funded by the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation puts not only the $100 million, they put in the $480 million to make up the difference. Pretty significant if you ask me. So I think one of the things that I will also share with you is that when you look at Polio Plus, we're doing something very, very, very significant. We are being able to provide a lot of these children with vitamin A. And vitamin A drops has allowed us to prevent 1.25 million children from dying by increasing their ability to be able to handle diseases. Very, very significant of some of the things that we are doing. I'm very, very proud to tell you that based upon the current status of our surveillance, it is very possible that our world is going to be dedicated polio-free by the end of 2026. Some may ask, why do we not have to go the normal, what a lot of people do, as no cases for a 3-year period? The reason is because the agencies that are responsible for determining whether we are polio-free have determined that our surveillance is so good that we know exactly where those cases are occurring, where they came from, and how to treat those. And so don't be surprised if at the end of 2026, we won't be polio-free. I will also tell you that something that I think is very significant. Don't be surprised if Rotary and the Gates Foundation doesn't receive the Nobel Peace Prize, which is pretty good. One of the things that is a little disturbing to me is Rotary Club and Rotarian participation. As of today, only 12.4% of all Rotarians get to polio. The other disturbing thing is that only 58.9% of all Rotary clubs get to polio. My fellow Rotarians, we are very, very close to this particular end, and I hope that you will influence others to be able to give to our particular Rotary Foundation in regard to this wonderful program. Based on that, I would like to simply, Thomas said I could open it up for questions. Be aware that I am a retired CPA, not a polio expert, but I would be very happy to answer any questions that anybody has in regard to our efforts that we're doing. Yes? Any? Yes, sir. Yeah, great.
On the previous slide, the percentages for those clubs around the world, or just clubs in the United States?
Oh, those are clubs around the world. Good question. Yes, sir.
One of the problems seems to me that we have to let them know that polio just doesn't disappear after 2046 and we still have to keep working at it. So they are looking at that end point as an event, whereas this is a drawn process. And that message is not getting.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would agree with you.
Question, please.
Can you say the question one more time?
One of the problems in messaging by Rotary is that we think of elimination of polio as an event which happens in 2026. There is much more work to be done over the years so that we keep this out of children's lives.
One of the things that he's saying is that it seems like at the end of 26 we'll be polio free and that will be done. And that's simply not true. This will continue on for many, many years, quite frankly. But one of the things that we've got to make sure that we do is get out of the funding of this particular program. This has to be taken over by governments. Governments are going to have to continue be able funding the constant immunization that we have of children. One of the problems that we have in the world is that the water out there in some of these areas is so dirty that it carries the polio vaccine, and that's one of the challenges that we do have. Yes, sir. Another question. Oh, you didn't have a question. Yes. Okay.
So you talked about wild polio, and under some of the slides there were that string of letters. I think it means vaccine-derived polio cases. Can you help this room understand the difference and what Rotary's commitment is and what it isn't?
Well, I think what you're referring to is we do have, those are wild cases of polio that you're seeing up here, and that's where we've had before. We had a real problem with vaccine-derived polio. If you recall, a lot of this, the vaccine that we had, it actually had the polio virus in there. We have now been given a new string of vaccines. It's called the Novi vaccine. We have already given out over 1 billion of those doses, and it is basically, it's a much stabler vaccine, and it has totally eliminated the wild or the polio that's been derived from the vaccine itself. So good question there. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Back when the United States was vaccinating kids, it took 2 or 3 doses. Pakistan, what is it, 10, 12? How many doses to immunize a child?
It's a good question. I don't know. I do know that a lot of these children get vaccinated quite often, but I don't know. So it's a good question. That's where the CPA comes in. Other questions?
So there's 2 kinds of vaccines. There's a Sabin vaccine and there's a soft vaccine.
Okay.
And the Sabin vaccine, or the soft vaccine, is a dead virus, and
Yes,
the soft
that's
right. One way or the other.
vaccine, the soft vaccine is a live virus, and that's where you get the wild presentations. So in the first one, you have to have those 3. And the United States has shifted back and forth between those. And some of those wild vaccines have come up in the world, and that's why you're getting these upshift. And Rotary has shifted the kind of vaccines they're going to give, so they don't have to do that. I'm sorry, yeah.
No, that was good, but you're right. It's exactly right. And that's why this new vaccine has been just a game changer, quite frankly. It's allowed, it's such a, from what I have been told, is a much stabler vaccine for the children. How many of you remember taking the sugar cubes when you were young? There you go. That shows you the age. What's that? They were never good?
No, because the vaccination in the arm was much better because that was a dead vaccine rather than the sugar cubes were a live vaccine.
I am so glad that I took my sugar cube when I was young.
Yep. Much easier, but then you have to
Yeah.
come back.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me, if you know, what are the efforts that are going to have to continue year after year after we are declared polio free? Why, people are gonna wanna know, why do we have to continue to raise money for polio after that?
I would tell you that I don't think we're gonna have to continue raising money after polio. There will be a grace period after it's been declared, and there will still, a lot of money is gonna have to be put into it. Because polio is always gonna exist. It's never gonna go away. So we've gotta continue immunizing children, cleaning up water. That's gonna be an ongoing thing, and I think, I go back to these labs. Those labs are critical, because they allow us to pinpoint exactly where that virus is, how it was deprived, where did it come from, and how to do it. It's been a game changer also. Yes, good question. Yes, sir. No, I thought you were here, though.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I don't know how
Oh,
you figured that out,
okay.
but.
Yeah.
So the wild virus has been very thoroughly contained down to this small area in Pakistan. The virus that is born in the vaccines that we distribute, those are shed, and from the water or whatever ecosystem they're ingested from, on further cases arise. That's why it's called a vaccine-derived polio. And when we knock out the wild virus, the vaccine-derived virus, because of the fact that those viruses are still in people's bodies, are still being shed, those can still cause further cases, and we have to fight that until all of those viruses that are in the public have been shed, have expired. It's not a valid word for a virus, but are no longer viable. Once that happens, just like smallpox, we will have wiped it out. But we've got to knock out all those vaccine-derived polio viruses that are in people's systems and are being shed. Once that happens, like I said, we will have knocked it out just like we did. Well, not us, but smallpox.
Yeah, and this is gonna take time. It's not
Yes.
gonna be a dead date, like the end of December 31st of 2036.
Right. Oh, and the novel polio virus, the difference is there were 3 variants of polio that the older virus was
Type
fighting.
1, type 2, and type 3.
Right, and one of those has been wiped out. The novel polio virus, type 2, I guess, the novel polio virus vaccine fights only the 2 remaining, and it fights it with a much smaller load of live virus, essentially. And that's the reason that there's a whole lot less shed into the environment as a result of those viruses. So the vaccine-derived polio virus being shed into the environment, now that we've switched over to the novel polio virus, is much, much smaller.
Yeah.
That's the reason for all the optimism of being able to wipe it out, is because we're shedding much less into the environment than we did before.
And Rotary has been so proactive about that, and
Yeah.
so we appreciate that.
Are you a doctor?
Negatory.
Well, you know a lot about polio.
I'm an engineer, sorry.
Oh, there you go.
We are public health experts.
Another one. Yeah, Roger?
Greg, what are the misconceptions, the misunderstandings that result in only 12.4% of our members contributing to Polio Plus?
Because they think it's over.
Mm.
Well, how many Rotarians have you seen that go, what's polio? And, a lot of people don't realize. But obviously, this is our big corporate project. It's something that we need to get done. Rotarians get things done. And I think that's one of the interesting things that's going to happen. A lot of people always ask me, well, we're going to get polio done in 2 years or whatever. What's next? And it'll be interesting to see whether polio, or polio, once it gets eliminated, whether we will ever take on another corporate project like this. Let's face it, we never thought we would be in it for 35 plus years. We thought we would be done, and Ed, you were probably around when all this was going on. So, Ed, it's really your fault. Anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. I'll talk to you later, okay? Thank you.